to keep my slides sort of simple. So, I first got involved with much of this. I was interested in, my husband and I wrote about Enron and ethics, but what I discovered, to my great distress, was that students felt like, what would happen was, right after I taught about Enron and ethics in class, I had a big cheating scandal. I ended up failing 9 seniors. My 15 seconds of fame, I was in the newspapers and all that stuff. So it's not the way you want to get involved in ethics. But what struck me was a student said, we didn't talk about these things in class. We're talking about Enron, we're talking about ethics and all of the fraud issues in that, and we didn't talk about cheating? Well, and I realized we didn't talk about what you do in class and how it's the same as what corporations are doing. And these principles that we talk about, and virtues and values, they apply across contexts. And for many people, across context means, this isn't the same. I don't know anything about this situation. So I got involved with looking at academic dishonesty, cheating, and linking. That when I teach about ethics, I want to make sure that I make a connection to what you do, how you apply what you think you've learned. And so I emphasize application. When we're applying, though, we tend to fall into this devil or angel. Did I do the right thing or the wrong thing? Well, in our field, Steve may talk about this also, we look at attribution theory, which says, if you fail, it's because you're a devil. You don't have morals. There's something wrong with you. But if I fail, I'm an angel, but I had difficult circumstances. Now, I'm not going to go into that, but I try to get students early in the semester to understand that we have these perceptual biases, all of us. And so when we're discussing ethical issues, we can expect to not always see things the way other people do. And we need to understand, it's like your mother said. Your friends may say, oh, sure, it's okay to do this, but they still judge you more harshly than they will tell you. And so it's true, we need to be aware of how we're interpreting situations and the standards we're using for ourselves and for others to make it more fair. The other part of this that we've already talked about, David mentioned, answerability, that we have a responsibility to do something in many cases. And we have exercises, I have some exercises that talk about your opportunity to do something. Another thing that helps with students understanding how and gaining the skill in actually doing something is bystander theory. And what they found at MIT was that if you engage in role plays, if you have students involved in group discussions in these ambiguous situations like Linda and OC have mentioned are on their website, if they have a group discussion, they're more likely, when later faced with the same ambiguous situation, they're more likely to do something rather than nothing. So we can teach students to do something, to use some of the information they have, but if they have a chance to share their fears and their doubts and their insecurities with their peers, they're more likely to take an action. The final thing is this cross-context application. So if we want students to realize that these things we talked about with Enron, with Exxon, with all these other companies, as well as the personal experiences, if we want them to actually apply it to their own personal lives, we need to bring it down to every day. How do you do something with this information now, today? So one of the things that I've been working on, and I had through the Daniels Fund, it's helped support some work over the summer with a great collaboration with a colleague in finance and another one in information systems. Jennifer Craig was here earlier. I think she had to leave. There she is. So Jennifer had great examples of students not realizing that some things are considered not exactly ethical in the class and out in the business world. So we developed cases that show the same principle in one setting and how you use it in another setting. There's actually a Bill Daniels story where Daniels was speaking to the Amos Tuck Business School, I think it was, and he starts off by talking about all these great deals he managed and pulled off. And he goes through several of them, and finally, one of the students raises a hand and says, aren't all these conflict of interest situations? Daniels takes a wrapped gift and hands it to him and said, you get the prize. Each one of these situations, if it's not illegal, it's unethical. And when I was in those situations, what I did was I disclosed everything to the partners in the situation involved until we all agreed that it was okay. But no one in this room mentioned this until now. So he was trying to get them to bring it down, to be answerable, to apply these concepts, to realize it happens in the classroom too. One of the things you might remember, there's a story, I mean, you know, some of us aren't so good at finance and all, but there was a couple, both with high-powered jobs, getting ready for work in the morning. The husband, the wife takes her shower first because she takes longer. The husband wants her to get out of there. The husband jumps in the shower, and while they're getting ready in the morning, the doorbell rings, and the husband says, "Honey, would you go downstairs and answer the door?" So, wrapped in a towel, she runs downstairs, answers the door, and it's the neighbor Bob. And Bob says, "Oh, Cheryl, good to see you." He says, "I'll give you $800 if you drop that towel." Cheryl thinks about it a minute, estimates her rate of return, and says, "Okay." She drops the towel. For a minute, she picks it back up again. She collects the $800. She goes back upstairs, and the husband says, "Who was at the door, honey?" And Cheryl says, "Oh, it was our neighbor Bob." And the husband says, "Did he say anything about that $800 he owes me?" So, bringing our lesson back to our daily activities, disclosure can avoid preventable exposure.